Right. So once again, welcome back to the rescheduled Rockport Democratic Town Committee DA Forum. Sorry for the technical issues before. We're very glad to hear that Mr. O'Shea's daughter as well, and we're glad to have Mr. Tucker and Mr. O'Shea both willing to come here for this final scheduled forum of their campaign. We had already done the coin toss. Mr. Tucker is going to begin with his 5-minute opening statement.
Great. Thank you again, Nathaniel. I appreciate it. Thank you to the Rockport Dems. We've done a number of these forums from different platforms and in different venues, and I think it's important for the good voters of Essex County to really have a good look at the two of us that are running in this race for the open seat. As I was saying, we've had a racial reckoning in this country. We've had a reckoning in Massachusetts on police reform, on criminal justice reform, and in my position at the State House, I've had a seat at the table and helped to shape all of the reforms that we've done, working very closely with colleagues, particularly the members of the Black and Latino caucus, who I've worked very, very closely with as well. I asked the voters to take a look at my very deep and very broad experience. I've been an attorney for just 22 years. I went to law school nights when I was a detective. I passed the bar in 2000 and was sworn in shortly thereafter. And I made a decision early on to use my law degree to stand with victims, to make sure that I use it to be the best police officer, detective, and police executive that I could. You can do lots of things with a law degree. And after a few months of practicing, doing some civil work, doing some real estate, I found that it wasn't for me. So I pivoted to really where my passion was, and that's in criminal justice and working with folks that really need to have a voice. And to me, that's what the job of the DA is all about. I had a 32-year career in law enforcement, most of that as a detective, and 17 of those years as the captain in charge of the detective division. And as such, in that position, I worked on over 1,000 cases from arrest to verdict. I sat with victims in living rooms and on kitchen tables across the county. I've learned the impact of crime on victims. Unfortunately, I've had to be the bearer of bad news more times than I can count to let somebody know that they had lost a loved one to a crime or to a fatal overdose. In 2009, Mayor Driscoll appointed me police chief in Salem, and being an innovator that I've done at every step of my career, we created a special unit called the Community Impact Unit. We hired 2 mental health clinicians. We were way ahead of the curve in 2009, helping people with mental health issues, substance use disorder. I also ran a department of 115 men and women, managed a budget of about $12 million. I oversaw a large conversion of our computer system. I did all of these things in addition to being a legislator. But in the minute or two that I have left, I just want to say something a little bit different than what I have been talking about. I want to talk about the tone and tenor of this campaign. When I first met my opponent, he shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and he said, "I will run a clean campaign," which I thought really didn't need to be said. It should have just been a given. Since that time, my opponent's campaign has descended into such negativity, and it really, I think, is starting to bother the voters of Essex County. He has actually said that a DA's administration under me would be a ship of fools. He said that my opinion of the court system is grounded in ignorance. He actually has said very often that a case that I had to handle, an internal case, was a scandal that permeated. I had to resign in disgrace. One time, he admitted the truth on the Lynn TV station, where he said, and I quote, "They didn't find you at fault. You were exonerated in the report."
Mr.
Unfortunately,
Tucker,
my opponent and his surrogates have continued this false narrative, and it's finally come to the point where I need to call it to stop.
Mr. Tucker, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we did say in the beginning that we were only going to talk about our own record and not what the opponent was going to do.
So I was under the impression that was in the questioning portion.
That's for the forum. We're trying to stick to just what our solutions are, Mr. Tucker.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was for the question.
That's quite all right. You have an additional 1:04 if you'd like to use that.
I just think that in a case such as this, the DA's office, and I asked the voters to look, this is a position of trust. It's a position of dignity. I asked the people to look at my record, what I've done. I've led a very, very public life. I've had 40 years worth of public decisions, public votes. People can look at it. They can agree. They can disagree. Managing a very complex department, a police agency of well over 100 police officers, that can be difficult sometimes. I've always looked at it. What's the impact on the officers, the families, the impact on the public? And I've always tried to be very, very fair. When it comes to being a district attorney, I think fairness and integrity has to be at the root of everything you do. It's not about securing convictions, it's about securing justice. And that's something that I've done in my whole career. I hope the voters take a look at this and that they would vote for me on September 6th in the Democratic primary.
Thank you. Mr. Shea, I'm going to give you a 30-second rebuttal time in addition to the 5-minute, should you choose to do that. Your 5-minute introduction begins now. Again, we review the minutes of, please, let's try and stick to what our solutions are and what our objectives are for improving the DA's office.
Certainly. Thank you, Nathaniel. I guess the original instructions sort of went out the window there, but that's okay.
We can.
I want to thank you, Nathaniel. I want to thank you, Paul, for your compassion, your consideration in allowing this to go forward today. Personally, I've had the worst August of my life in 50 years. On August 10th, I lost my mentor of 26 years. He had a heart attack coming to an event that he was going to be there for me to introduce me to some of his friends there. And he passed away and I had to bury him about a week later. And I've been dealing with the fallout of that in my office ever since. On the night that this was supposed to take place, my daughter had an emergency surgery that had to be scheduled and scared the life out of me. And I want to thank you both for going above and beyond and reaching out. And I want to thank all my supporters and all the well-wishers that have contacted me quietly or indirectly in support of both my daughter and my mentor. So with that said, I want to go back to the beginning of this campaign. This is a public trust. This is not a political office to be passed from one person to the next. When I decided to get into this, John Blodgett had announced his retirement in January. I think it was around the 9th. And my opponent had then announced that he was going to be running, and there was a picture in the Salem Evening News of the two of them. This is just bad for democracy because it discouraged a lot of really qualified people from getting in this race, but it didn't scare me away. The things that
Mr. O'Shea, we're trying to not talk about the opponent.
I'm just moving chronologically, Nathaniel, through the race. Through the race.
We'll try and not mention the opponents during our discussion.
Fine. I'll stick to the chronology as it is.
Thank you.
This race began for me. Never done this before. Began for me in earnest in February. We went out and started getting the signatures, but we had a kitchen table discussion like many people do, and we were talking about whether or not I could overcome certain obstacles that are in the way politically and whether I could continue to manage my practice. And I was really on the fence. And my daughter Bella, who had the surgery recently, said to me that right before I declared, she said, "You've taught us all our lives, Dad, never to be afraid to fail. And so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail." And that's why I'm here. I'm proud of the campaign that we've run. I run on facts. My job as an attorney for the last quarter century has been to take the facts and the evidence and seek justice. That's exactly what I'm doing in this campaign. The facts, everything I've said, everything I've done, everything my team has published is backed up by facts, whether they're reports, whether they're statements that have been made, whatever they've been. I'm the only candidate in this race who has practiced law for any significant period of time. I am the only candidate in this race that has given the voters an actual platform of change that is based on the things that I have seen and done in the court and seen and done in my life. I can tell you those 4 things right off the top, and anybody that's been paying attention to this campaign knows what they are. Right now, we have a social justice crisis created in part by the filing of these 58A dangerousness motions by the current administration. I recently posted on my website and on Facebook the facts, the actual facts. 1,106 of these, and this is all findable right online on the Mass site, and you can find it on my website and on Facebook. Now, 1,106 of these have been filed. The next closest of these 58 A's was a county, the full county was 601, I believe, in Bristol County. That's almost double. We're filing these in Lynn and Lawrence, 2 cities, more than Suffolk County, more than any other county, just the 2 cities. We filed 392 of these in Lawrence, and Suffolk County in total filed 392. There are not more dangerous people. The other three things that I'll get into that are changes that I'd make. We need to be compliant with 258F regarding U visas. I'll bring in my partner, Helene Morris, to do that. We need to make significant IT upgrades. We're woefully behind. And third, I will give back discretion to the ADAs to be able to do their job, to improve their job satisfaction. Those are the things I'm going to do. I've laid out a platform. I'm the only one that has. I'm ready to do this job. I've been getting ready to do this job for almost a quarter century. And I hope that you'll consider me as your new district attorney. Thank you.
Stopping under time. Thank you very much, Jim. Paul, there was a brief mention of your name at the beginning of that. Do you want a 30-second rebuttal?
Sure. Just I hope that the voters just take a look at my record. And I've led a very public life. I've taken votes. I've made critical decisions that impact people's futures. I just ask that they take a good look at the record. I think that's sufficient. Thank you, Nathaniel.
My pleasure. I'm trying to keep things as neutral and fair as possible. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for both of you. And I do like what Jim said, the compassion, Paul, that you've demonstrated in being willing to reschedule that. That's appreciated by everybody. And certainly the Rockport Democratic Town Committee is deeply grateful for both of you doing this.
Thank you.
On to our first actual question.
Nathaniel, you had
yes.
indicated I'd have 30 seconds to rebut what was said at the very
I
beginning.
thought you had opted not to do that. My apologies, Jim.
Oh, no.
30 seconds.
I just want to restate that I'm proud of my campaign. I'm proud of the people. We've never done this before. I'm proud of the people that have stepped up to work for me. I've got over 300 people that are going to be out on election day. I've got them on the regular. They've stepped up in a big way for me. All of them. Everything that we've put out is factual. It's all backed up by reports. It's all backed up by hard evidence. I've been doing this for almost a quarter century, and this is what I do. I take the facts and I put them in the context in which they're supposed to be placed for people to make their own decisions. Okay, this will be decided by the voters, not by the politicians.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to our first question. This one's near and dear to my heart. I was very glad that some people submitted questions along that. So as district attorney, do you think you should have a role in environmental issues? And if so, what are those issues and how do you foresee your approach to dealing with environmental issues as a district attorney? Paul, you're first. You get 2 minutes.
Great. Thanks very much. This is an issue near and dear to my heart as well. I've worked very closely in Salem with a group called SAFE, Salem Alliance for the Environment. And we actually have, over the last few years, worked very hard to clean up one of the dirty dozen 12 coal-fired power plants in the country to where it is now natural gas-fired. And I'm proud to say that we just passed a bill and we're going to end up having offshore wind in Salem. The short answer, Nathaniel, is yes, the DA also has a role to play here. If you look all the way through in the supply chain, all the way through with these environmental issues, sometimes there are things that are broken, the law is broken. The DA actually has a very strong role to play here. I think it would also be in partnership with the Mass DEP and the federal EPA to see who could have the best prosecution to stop some of these things that are happening. We've seen so many violations, not only from OSHA, but the actual environmentals as well. So the DA is going to have a strong role. The DA, and part of what you'll hear me say often is the role of the DA in the community. The community has a big say in our environment. And I think as such, that these things need to be ferreted out. So often in some of these cases, and we've seen this more so in other states, I think, where there's been violations, it really has to be probably a partnership between a local DA and the Attorney General's office. I know there has been some prosecutions, and the DA as a community leader, as somebody who has the bully pulpit on so many of these issues, I feel would have a strong role to play here as well.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Nathaniel. The overwhelming majority of environmental cases are taken up either by the federal government or the hierarchy above us at the Attorney General's level. However, there are a number of instances where the DA's office locally on coastal communities in particular has interactions with the environmental police. I've defended any number of cases where the environmental police are making arrests for any number of offenses that trigger local jurisdiction. But by and large, this is really a jurisdictional question. The answer I would give is yes as well. I would cooperate with those authorities. We will take whatever action is within our grasp without overstepping our boundaries and getting into the realm of what should be done federally or at a higher level. I think the DA always has to be cognizant of where they fit in the hierarchy. Certainly the local cases, like I've mentioned, one that you see a lot in the district court is when people are shorting lobsters and things like that, and the environmental police make arrests. Absolutely. We'll prosecute those cases. We'll take whatever cases come through our jurisdiction, and we'll lend whatever assistance we can to those other authorities. But primarily, the bigger issues, the larger issues in terms of the environment, involve those other agencies, and it's something that you have to be mindful of as a district attorney on any level of case, whether it's environment or this comes up a lot in more serious drug cases involving over state lines, trafficking, that kind of thing. The other entities, the other government entities are going to take jurisdiction of a lot of this stuff. So this is something the DA will have input on, but it's within the confines of what the office power allows. Thank you.
Thank you both for keeping things tight and efficient. The next question is a complex question, so I'm glad we've had a short question to start with. This one, I was surprised by how many very, very heartfelt submissions were given on this one topic. So I'll read sort of a summary of multiple questions, which allows you then to get to the core of it. Jim, you'll be answering first on this one. So one of the questions that came up, and I'm lumping these all together as, do you support the Foster Bill of Rights, which has been idling forever within our House of Representatives and within the Senate? What could you do as an DA to protect foster children and those who care for them? Many of the issues that came up around these issues are in Massachusetts. Why are so many cases going past the 40-month deadline when instead of 18 months deadline, which is where they're supposed to be for adoption and parental rights kick in? Other states have a 12-month deadline. There are many, many cases that are not even tracked outside of the state. So why are DCF and CPS cases not tracked across lines so that then we can get children who are caught in this infinite loop of abuse, neglect, and never ending up in a permanent home? It's a really difficult question. And so I'm glad we're beginning our forum with something really meaty, because this is going to take some time. And I'm afraid you only have 2 minutes. So Jim, good luck.
That's okay. Thank you, Nathaniel. This came up at the Legal Women Voters Forum as well. It was asked in a different context. To answer the question straight up, yes, I support the Foster Bill of Rights. I'll tell you this, the biggest way to address this, I think the best way to address this, as I indicated at that prior forum, is to break this down and try and find the root cause of the issue. Where we have foster care parents that are in this for their own means, for their own ability to earn or some advantage, we need to take a hard look and determine why these kids are being neglected. And we'll start with them. From a prosecutor's perspective, we can do a much better job in terms of investigating and prosecuting people who are mistreating children in foster care. In terms of the backlog that you referenced, I believe that our agencies are simply, particularly DCF, are just overwhelmed in terms of numbers. This is a situation where the second side of that coin on the foster issue is, what services as a district attorney can we provide to these kids? In other words, if you have children that are suffering from mental health issues or drug addiction, the disease of addiction, they're addicted to drugs, and those are part of the root cause, what can we do in terms of helping them? There are all kinds of preventative and diversion resources that we can use to try and address that side of it. So I think first and foremost, the best answer to the question in trying to protect these kids is to determine where we're failing. Is it the foster parents? Is it the foster system in terms of where these kids are being placed? And if they're abusing kids, I have no problem as DA stepping in and prosecuting them for child neglect. And I think that will start to clean up that side of it and send a deterrent message to people that would be in the foster system that this is not going to be tolerated. That if you're going to do this, you better do it right, and you better protect these kids. And on the other side of it, we have diversion, and we have the ability to provide services and take preventative measures to help these kids if they're suffering with a problem that's also contributing to this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Jim and Paul, I'm going to ask you then, I clearly didn't state the question clearly enough, so I'll give you another 30 seconds after Paul. But this is in the case of foster parents who are actually doing the good job of caring for children. But because the system is failing, the kids are not being allowed to be adopted by the foster parents, and it's going past the 18-month period. And at times it means that children who were in good care in foster homes are being resent to biological homes where they aren't being protected. These are falling through the cracks, and this is an issue that's been brought up by many people in preparation for the forum. So forgive me for not making that clear. I'll give you 30 seconds to continue with that, and then we'll let Paul have the full answer since the question's been more clearly stated. Go ahead, Jim. 30 seconds more if you want.
Oh, I would just say that we have to prevent the kids from being placed in back with parents who simply can't take care of them. If the foster parents are doing a good job, then we have to keep them with them as long as possible and work toward the adoption. The whole Foster Bill of Rights, my understanding, is about providing services to these kids and giving them rights that can be acted upon through the courts. So I support that fully. And if the DA's role again has to stay within the confines of what we're able to do. If the real parents are committing the crimes and it's not the foster parents that are neglecting these kids, then again, we have to step in and take away the children from these biological parents.
Okay.
And we have to be in a situation where we'll prosecute them for neglect.
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't clear the first time around. That was a very good, complete answer. Paul, you get your time now.
Thanks, Nathaniel. I think that a lot of people don't even know what a hidden problem this is. This is something that's been in the shadows. And I think only the folks that are intimately involved in the system really know the magnitude of the problem. I was actually at a meet and greet a couple of weeks ago, and a woman pulled me aside. She's been a foster mom to dozens of kids, and she was specifically talking about this issue, and nobody knew better than she did. And it was pretty horrifying. There has been systemic failures. We've all seen them. These are the cases that make the front page of the Boston Herald. I think what we need to do first is make sure that we robustly support foster parents. These are people doing incredible work, that they step forward, they give up their time, their love, their homes. These are the folks that need our support, and we need to do everything we can to invest in them. As a state rep, I've been involved in several cases where foster families were trying to adopt, and DCF were trying to take the kids away and put them back in the biological home. It would have been a recipe for disaster. The biological parents were not prepared, and I know DCF, I know the workers. I think that the vast majority of our DCF social workers are doing just incredible, fantastic work. We also have to realize right now what I think is another hidden secret, and that is the looming issue of kids with mental health issues. We've seen it. We've seen it in 1 out of every 4 young person is presenting with some degree of mental illness. I've been helping parents during my entire tenure as a state rep, kids that have been boarded in emergency rooms for 12, 14, 15 days because they can't find a bed. This is a societal problem. We've been looking at this case of young Harmony, who's been missing for 2.5, 3 years. She was in a foster home, went back to the biological parents. That's completely unacceptable. This is happening. One case is too much. We've got to make investments in this. We have to make sure that we're supporting these foster parents who are doing incredible work.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for tackling that really difficult and important question. On to another difficult one. Are you ready? The Moving Families Forward Bill. This is something that is hotly discussed. We had it, then it was vetoed, then it was overridden, and now there is a petition to get it removed. Where do you stand on the Moving Families Forward Bill? And do you feel that it is an appropriate approach to dealing with licenses within Massachusetts?
Yes.
And-
So I believe I'm first, Nathaniel.
Yep, you're first today.
So this is an easy one for me. I am solidly in the yes column. A little bit of history. In 2009, when I became police chief, I was speaking at a Latino neighborhood group, and somebody asked me about it, and I immediately said, yes, I support it. These are folks who are our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers. They need to get the basics. They need to drive to medical appointments. They need to drive to school. I've been working on this issue for 13 years. I have a letter in my desk right here that I wrote to Tom McGee, who was the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee in 2009, advocating that we get this done. This is not an immigration issue. This is not a federal immigration issue. This is a quality of life issue. And I've been very clear about this. We should also note that this is a safety bill as well. It's a road safety bill. These folks that are undocumented, that we should be allowing to drive, they should be able to have insurance. They should be able to go through driver's ed. They should be able to purchase their vehicle. They are members of our society. And as such, they enjoy all the rights and responsibilities as they should when it comes to driving. I've been in favor of this all the way through. As you stated, Nathaniel, right now, apparently the opponents have gotten enough signatures to put it back on the ballot. I've been through this drill before when it came to transgender protections. I worked really hard on that, making sure that our transgender brothers and sisters had protections. There were people that got this on the ballot. I actually did radio and TV spots to stand up and make sure that we were able to defeat that ballot question, which we did. This is a safety issue. It's a family issue. I strongly stand in support. Senator Crichton from Lynn has done a phenomenal job as the chair of transportation. He gets it. Many of my colleagues get it. And I think that we need to make sure that we defeat the ballot question as well.
Thank you very much. Great answer. Jim, you're up.
Thank you, Nathaniel. As an immigration practitioner for over 24 years, and with my partner, attorney Helene Morris, I can't tell you how many great people we've had the opportunity to defend. So this is a big yes for me. I do believe that it's directed right in the bill towards undocumented people. This does touch immigration for sure, but I wholeheartedly support it, and I'll tell you why. There is a safety component to it too, but these folks are hardworking people. They're just trying to get to work. They're just trying to get home and support their families. And more to the point, as a criminal defense attorney, a bar advocate who represents a lot of people who can't afford their own attorney, when these cases come into Lynn District Court or to any of the district courts, but particularly Lynn, a busy district court, they're broomed out on costs anyway. So this is just taking time away from the court. It's clogging up the system in terms of having the clerks produce this paperwork that ends up being useless. So these are not situations where these cases are being prosecuted at any kind of a high level anyway. The other part of this is, even if you oppose this bill, and by the way, I had somebody outside of Market Basket here in Middleton ask me to sign that petition or sign on, and I would not, obviously. Even if you believe in the bill, this is a way to document the undocumented, to get information that protects us all, to give them a position in society where they can drive and be safe. It increases the likelihood that the cars are going to be registered and insured. And we get to have people finally come out of the shadows, which so many of my clients want to do. I do believe this is an immigration issue, and I won't back away or run away from that at all. I'm fine with that. I've represented immigrants undocumented immigrants for so long. I've seen them up close. They're hardworking people, just like the rest of us. They're just trying to get ahead and trying to make a living for their families. And the courts are treating these things as non-issues anyway.
Okay. Thank you both. I'm very impressed by both your answers. I'm going to give you one quick follow-up answer. Within the Moving Families Forward bill, it had been changed and rechanged. And at the end, it had been modified. Some even accused it of being watered down by limiting the number of people who would qualify. In the last iteration, only certain people would be qualified, being those with expired passports. In the original iteration, it was everybody. Yes or no answer only. Are you in favor of it being for everybody or no?
So I hate, Nathaniel, the yes or no answer may be misleading only because I know the history of the bill here.
Yes.
So are we limited to the yes or no? There is a lot more to it than that. Let's
try and keep it the yes or no, because we've got a lot of really meaty questions. But in essence, we've all gone over the history of the bill. So do you prefer the latest iteration or the earlier iteration? It might be another way to say that yes or no answer.
For now, to get this done, I support leaving it as is for now.
Okay. And Jim?
I'm for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate how well you guys are handling these challenging questions, and I appreciate you sticking to the rules of saying what matters to you as an individual. Here's another hopefully short question that was submitted by somebody in Beverly. Body cams, yay or nay? Jim, you're first.
Body cam is a big yay, and I will tell you why. This has been a great breakthrough for both law enforcement and for the defense. Quite often we're left with a situation where we're reliant, and we've always been reliant on the great job of our police officers to tell us what's happening. But in some instances, as we've seen in recent history, this has not always been the case. And the body cam protects everybody. There is no lie in the video. The video shows all. I can't tell you how many cases are resolved much sooner and by way of agreement based on the fact that we have body cam footage. This has been a great tool that's been used in the court system, and I am wholeheartedly in support of it to protect both the defendants that I've represented and the police that are out there doing a very difficult job. I think it puts a new balance in terms of what's going to be done when people both know that everything that's happening around them is being recorded. I think people act differently. I think they're a lot more hesitant to do things that might be inappropriate on both sides where the video is rolling. Having access to that has been just a wealth of information. It's been extremely helpful in my job, both to the prosecutors and to myself. This is a great piece of evidence. I am very much in favor of it, and I hope it will continue. The manner in which they're transferred from the DAs to us could surely be improved. The process that's taking is taking a considerable amount of time, and we can get a lot more efficient with it. And that's one of the 4 things of my platform that will improve. But the advent of the body camera has been very helpful to both sides.
Thank you. Paul.
Yes, as somebody who spent half my adult life in law enforcement, 2 thumbs up. Absolutely in favor, have been since the beginning. We have to make sure that we get it right in terms of the rules and the regulations to make sure that officers are doing everything that they should be. Just a couple of points on the few of the studies that I've seen in the relatively short time that the body cams have been deployed. The amount of complaints against police officers has gone way down. The complaints about police misconduct have gone way down. These are excellent pieces of footage. These tell the story. There's no adulterating it. This is what it is. A couple of issues, though, I think that just need to make sure that we have a discussion about them. Oftentimes, technology outpaces the law. We've seen this in a lot of different areas, particularly when it comes to surveillance and things like that. We need to make sure that we have rules that the officers know and that the public knows as well. Things around the 2-party consent law. Things around how do we store these? What's subject to the Freedom of Information Act? Does the public have a right to access all of this footage? I also would say that with the improvements, the rapid improvements in technology, I think that process of getting the actual footage to the DA's office and then to the defense counsel, I think is getting better. I will also add one more thing. I've had numerous discussions with district court and superior court DAs. It's very time consuming when pieces of evidence, and this is evidence, the footage is evidence, when it has to be transcribed, when it has to be looked at, discovery has to be complied with. I think that will probably get better as well. But in the long run, we are going to be much better off in terms of professionalizing law enforcement and having trust and confidence in the police. 2 thumbs up, absolutely in favor.
Yeah, I'm really wonderful answers, both of you. Thank you very much. Paul, you're next for the easy question. We're going to have a low ball here. Right now, you're both in the thick of the campaign, days left to the campaign. So Labor Day weekend for you is a wash. You're not going to have any fun, any relaxing. If you weren't campaigning, what would you normally be doing on Labor Day weekend, Paul?
Probably go away for the weekend. My wife and I are avid hikers. It probably would have been Mount Washington, but while the weather is still good, we like to do that. I'm sad to say that this 8-month campaign, I've literally taken 1 day off, and we really miss it. That's something that we enjoy doing together. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary a couple of weeks ago. So everything has been on hold until Wednesday. And then I feel like we can kind of get our life back a little bit. So I appreciate that question.
My pleasure. Jim.
Thank you. tomorrow night I'd have been playing hockey. That's the first kickoff on the Winthrop hockey skate. So missing that. They may cancel it anyway. My wife and I don't usually go away. We work 6 days a week, and we'd probably just be enjoying some time with Luna here alone, and maybe hiking locally or just enjoying the day. I also have to move Bella in. She's moving apartments from her college apartment to Brookline. She's working full time now, but so I would have done that, and now we put that off until the day after the campaign. The day after the campaign, day after Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going to court. I'm in court Wednesday, and so there's no rest in sight. This has just been nonstop, but I am thankful that we are coming to the end. There's no question about that.
Kudos to you both for 8 months of hard labor. Back to the difficult questions, and this one was supported from a victim of domestic abuse. They want to know why judges and lawyers seem to give abusers so many chances. Rather than an aggressive, immediate consequence, they're given a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, and therefore endangering the domestic abuse victims over and over again. Why are the exact words are, why do lawyers and judges give abusers so many chances to change and not hold them to harsh consequences from the first offense? Jim.
Sure. I take a little bit of issue with the question, the way it's phrased, because I think that's not the case in every single case. The court looks at all the facts and circumstances of every case. I can give you examples where I've had first-time offenders punished with the maximum of 2.5 years in the House of Correction for a particularly egregious offense of domestic violence. And the opposite end of that spectrum is where cases are being dismissed because of the facts and evidence don't dictate or don't warrant a conviction in the case after trial. So my approach throughout the course of this campaign and throughout my practice has been to take every single case based on the facts and evidence presented, and that's what the courts do too. The judges look at the case depending on what the injuries were, what the evidence is, what the evil intent of the actor was, and they also do look at their criminal history and their criminal record. So this is not a case where this happens in every single event, but I do think that the underlying premise of our judicial system, aside from punishing evil acts, is to look for rehabilitative components within the system. We have a rehabilitative justice system. The idea is that if you provide the services and you address the problem that's causing the underlying issue, causing the person to be violent, causing the person to commit acts like this. For example, the Intimate Partners Program is ordered in almost every one of these cases where there's probation. And that is an extremely arduous type of probation where the person is put through a 40-week program. And if they don't complete it, they're sentenced to jail. So I think the question, I understand where it comes from, but by the same token, you can't paint every case with the same brush. There are certainly cases where first-time offenses are bad enough where they either get indicted or they get prison time and jail time.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul.
Let's be clear right at the top. Domestic violence in any form is a crime, whether it's a push or anything up to and including strangulation. I spent many months and beyond on the domestic violence lethality assessment team with the district attorney's office. I was part of the team. We looked at the worst cases in Essex County every month, and we used a rubric to go through what happened in these cases. When there's domestic violence with strangulation, we know that's a precursor to tremendous violence. Those should be the subject of the 58A detention hearings. And in Essex County, they have been, as they should be. Let me give you just a brief bit of history. When I first got on the police department in 1983, domestic violence was seen as a family issue. It was something left for the family to settle. If we went to a situation where a husband had pushed or punched a wife or an intimate partner, we didn't even have the right to make an arrest at the time. Fortunately, the laws have caught up. I also have worked extremely closely with an organization called HAWK, Healing Abuse, Working for Change. They set the gold standard of making sure that domestic abuse survivors are taken care of. I've worked from start to finish with HAWK. I've just been invited to their fundraiser. I'm going to be the guest auctioneer to help raise money. And it's an easy ask for me because everyone should support this. The question of punishing domestic abusers, there has to be a deterrent effect here. We have to say to people who would think about this that you will get punished if you engage in this behavior. We also have to make sure that we survive with the survivors, that safety is number one. There has a ripple effect here as well. There are other family members, there may be children. These are the toughest of the cases. And the bottom line is we need to make sure that we protect our survivors of abuse. We do that in partnership with the DA's office, the police, and Hawk. We've done a good job. I worry about this during COVID.
Thank you both. These are not easy questions, and I'm deeply grateful to your thoughtful answers. The next question is actually a follow-up question from our earlier forum. Rockport Democratic Town Committee had hosted the Essex County Sheriff's Forum, and that spurred more discussions within the community, and that led to the following question. In Lynn, we've implemented one of the nation's first, if not the first, non-law enforcement first responder team. What are your views on that? And please respond and elaborate.
Okay, I think I'm up, Nathaniel.
Yep, you are.
So this actually looks a lot like the model that I started in 2009. I believe that we were the first police department in Massachusetts to hire mental health workers, social work clinicians, to go in the community with the police officers to deal with folks on the street with mental health issues, substance use disorder issues, oftentimes dual diagnosis. And then we added to that they followed up every overdose that we had in Salem. We followed up the next day. Our model is a bit different than I believe what Lynn is trying to contemplate. Our officers work side by side in the cruisers with the social workers. The way we saw it is this is in real time, and the social workers could offer so much of their expertise and experience, particularly around the area of de-escalation. Now, my understanding is in Lynn, and I've talked to Chief Reddy about this, that their unit, this mobile crisis response unit, would be a standalone response team. I hesitate about that. I worry about their safety. I worry about some of the crossover that could happen if there's some conflict between the police and this mobile crisis unit during some type of an event. I just hope that there's very good coordination here between the two. So I worry about the safety of the unarmed response team. I get it. I know it's important. I think they can do some really important work, but they are not police officers. One of the things that I was clear about when I created this response team in Salem, we called it the Community Impact Unit. The hiring of civilian mental health clinicians was not to replace police officers. In fact, I wanted to add police officers. It was to work in conjunction with them. And depending on the type of situation, who would take the lead. I think the people in Lynn, I know Chief Reddy and Mayor Nicholson, they're excellent leaders. They know what they're doing. I just hope that the safety of the response team is taken into account.
Thank you very much. Jim.
Having worked, Nathaniel and Lynn, in the district court and seen some of the most serious cases come through, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw a triple homicide followed by a suicide. I am extremely concerned about some sort of replacement of the police. The police are trained and they have years of training and the ability to be able to handle these situations. My feeling should be that there is absolutely a place for victim witness advocates, for social workers, for these types of teams, but I don't want them being the first responders. I don't want them being into those types of situations where you're talking about. Lynn can be a very dangerous city, as we've seen with these homicides. There's been a number of shootings in the streets. The police are equipped to handle these types of situations, and they have been for years. I would want to see, in terms of their safety, in terms of protecting the people that would be on these response teams, I would like to see this be a first action through the police department rather than have them either in the cruisers or being the first response. I think Lynn has done an amazing job in trying to de-escalate these situations in a preventative manner by having community policing. The more police we can get out on the streets, out on the blocks, out on the bikes, and interacting with people that they may see on a call in the community, the less likely we're going to have these situations escalate to the point where we need the crisis team to get involved, because you'll be able to put a face and a name with the person that you're dealing with from the police department. He'll be officer, and then using their first name or last name, they'll know the person rather than dealing with them for the first time and being total strangers. I think that's more effective, and that's how I would favor the approach in Lynn and elsewhere, but especially in a city like my city in Lynn.
Thank you very much. I'm appreciative that these are not easy questions. They're not easy topics. The previous question was dealing with how to deal with non-violent crimes and like a mental health issue. We go on to another similarly related non-violent crime issue. In the event of bail, there are, I mean, the most nationally, internationally, it made headlines of Khalif Browder in New York, who was accused of stealing the backpack. Because he could not afford bail, he spent many years in jail awaiting trial. Your views on no bail for non-violent crimes. Jim, you get first on this one.
Thank you. My approach is the same throughout the criminal justice system, that as DA, I would apply an approach that doesn't deal with the nature of the offense charge, but deals with the facts and circumstances and the background of the defendant in every single case. I think that's the only just way to approach these things. We're not going to decriminalize things, and we're not going to charge and do 58 A's based on the nature of the charge there. We owe it to the victims, to the defendants, to everybody within the system to evaluate the case on a case-by-case basis. We now have in Massachusetts, Nathaniel, the bail fund, which for people, I've represented indigent defendants in Lynn for almost a quarter century. These are my clients. These are the people that I care about. The bail fund allows us to get people out of jail on small cash bails where the DA thinks this is appropriate. More importantly, we've now advanced to the point where we can address a lot of these issues pre-trial instead of cash bail. The case law is going away from cash bail. So instead of asking for cash bail, a lot of the DAs are asking for example, if the defendant ends up before the court because they're suffering from the disease of addiction, from alcoholism, from underlying problems, we'll put conditions on their release to try and help them address the problem that brought them to the court in the first place, rather than put some cash bail on. I agree. Nobody should be held based on their inability to pay, based on their financial circumstances. Everyone should have the same opportunity. And there is nothing more important. I've always said, anyone that's held for 1 minute more than they should be in a jail is 1 minute too many. Made that argument on hundreds, if not thousands, of bail arguments in my almost 25 years of practice. And I continue to view it that way as a district attorney. There are lots of other things we can do besides cash. But what I don't want to do is tell the bad guys that there aren't going to be cash bails for certain offenses, so that we end up with a different kind of problem with them knowing the playbook. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Paul, do you want to address that now?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Nathaniel. I think it really boils down to a balance between what's going to keep the public safe and what's going to have somebody return to court. Now, I believe, Nathaniel, you specifically mentioned non-violent crimes. So this would not trigger the 58A. This is strictly a question on cash bail. I think the courts have been clear that it should not be on an ability to pay. It's really about what will make it certain, or at least as certain as can be, to have that person return to court. I worried for a long time about people that were held on low bails. And I can tell you that in 2009, one of the reasons why I started the Community Impact Unit was because we were picking up people for quality of life issues, drinking in public, trespassing, minor shoplifting. And those folks, after a certain amount of time, they're living on the streets, invariably they would miss court. And at some point, a district court judge would put a bail on them. Sometimes it was $100, $200. It might as well have been $1 million. They were not going to make it. And what we found was, and the reason why we created that unit, was these people would cycle in and out of the Middleton jail, and then eventually they would present back on the streets of Salem with the exact same issues that they went in with. There are so many other non-restrictive or lesser restrictive means to make sure that we balance that public safety. We've seen the use of the electronic monitoring. We can do that pre-trial. We've seen drop-in centers. We've seen curfews. We've seen house arrest. I think it's incumbent upon the DA's office to make sure that the best decisions are being made. Nobody should sit at Middleton because of the inability to pay. And I think that judges are recognizing that. I think we've done a lot better than in the 13 years when I started that community impact unit. I still think we can do a little bit better.
Thank you both. These are wonderful, in-depth answers, and I'm finding this incredibly informative. I hope your prospective voters are finding it equally informative. Going on to sort of a light question, sort of a magical question. Paul, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the criminal justice system today, and you don't have to wait for legislation, you don't want, what was the one thing that you would change if you could do that today?
Fairness in making an investment so that everybody has individual justice as they should. So many people present in the district court with the life experiences, good and bad, that they come with. So many people, as we're seeing, that have mental health issues, substance use issues. If we could simply address those. We have a court clinic, and I work closely with the court clinic in my days as a detective. But what we don't have is the investments where somebody cycling through the system should be able to get treatment on demand. I can tell you, I worked with Sheriff Coppinger as a legislator and really pushed hard for medical assisted treatment, MAT, making sure the folks could get Suboxone, methadone, Vivitrol. We have somebody in the system. Let's do the best that we can with them. We also look at it the same way. Somebody that has anger management issues, somebody that has some issue that has caused them to enter into the criminal justice system. We just don't have enough resources to match the need. I think we need to make some really smart but hard decisions in investment. This is controversial and it shouldn't be. I can tell you that I worked on a bill with Kay Khan, a rep from Newton, to have higher education in the prison system. We sponsored it. Right now, only BU has a program. We tried to open it up to community colleges, and the emails that I got criticizing me for that were incredible. Better outcomes for offenders is better outcomes for society, public safety. While we have these folks in the system, let's do the best that we can for them. And I say we, because it really has to be probation. It's got to be the court clinic, the judges, the DA's office. We've seen some success stories. We've seen this with the drug court. I've attended a dozen drug court graduations. There's some really magical things that are happening. We can expand that and do better.
Thank you very much. Jim.
Thank you. It's not a magic wand. My approach is to right the social justice wrongs that have been created in part by these 58A filings and the disproportionate incarceration of people of color and people in the Latina community. This is well documented. By reducing the number of these motions, I hope that we'll be able to address that social justice issue. That is the plan. The numbers don't lie. You're talking 2 to 1 where these are being filed in Essex County. It's not making us more safe. We need to indict the dangerous people. I know who they are because I've been practicing and I can discern between them. Every case should be evaluated based on the facts and circumstances. We can't continue to do this. We're locking up way too many people of color. These are not disputable numbers. It's in black and white. It's there for anyone to see. And this is the first thing that I would do. In terms of the magic wand, there are 2 things I'd love to be able to wipe out with a magic wand. Number 1 is the opiate crisis, but there is no magic wand. We have to be creative. We have to come and try and do things differently. The drug court was a great step in the right direction, but my clients tell me, and I see when it's presented to them, it's presented as a stick rather than a carrot. This is take the drug court or else go to jail. I would flip that around, give them a lot more pretrial options and say, if you can prove yourself staying clean and sober, then that'd be great. You'll be able to be rewarded at the end with less than a conviction on your record so you can get back to work and be back as a contributing member of society. And maybe most of all with the magic wand, what I would wipe out would be people that are wrongfully convicted. We've got plenty of people in the jail that shouldn't be there. The advent of DNA has helped a lot. The Innocence Project has helped a lot, but there are still people in there that shouldn't have been in there for a minute that have been in there for years. And my magic wand would let them out, and I would wipe out the wrongful convictions. So those are just a few of the things.
Thank you very much, both, for really in-depth and thoughtful answers. Next one is somewhat, again, controversial issue, is the use and purchase of by law enforcement of military equipment and the use and purchase of tear gas. The questioner who wrote that pointed out that tear gas has been outlawed by the Geneva Convention, and yet within this country, some police forces are using them within this country. Your views on that, Jim?
Nathaniel, I would disfavor the use of anything that is a military grade type weapon. I think the police have and will do a lot better with non-lethal force, with all the other things that they have at their disposal to do their job. Let's be clear, this is an extraordinarily difficult job, but I don't think we need to be using anything that's been outlawed by the Geneva Convention. Again, our practice takes us through some of the people who have been through the worst human rights abuses in our immigration clientele, and the torture that they've been put through with this type of use of these types of devices and military grade weapons is just deplorable. The stories are absolutely heartbreaking. So I don't think our police officers are better than that. They're well trained. They have plenty of defensive abilities. I would say this, the law enforcement that we see today is far different than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Our police are doing things much better. The training is much better. I have a client who's a police officer who I'm defending right now, and he was trained back in the mid 80s. And we're going through the preparation for his testimony at his trial. And he said that part of his defensive tactics training was something called pain compliance. I told him straight up, if you use the word pain compliance, you're going to be convicted immediately. We've come a long way from the mid 80s and into what the training is now and what our police officers are able to do. And we don't need the use of these tear gas weapons or anything that violates the Geneva Convention for that matter. We've come a long way, and I've been there every step of the way for 25 years.
Thank you very much. Paul?
I think the issue of military grade weaponry in the hands of domestic police officers has been the subject of a lot of good conversation. I actually met with some folks yesterday, and this actually came up. And when I use my second minute, I'm going to tell you a quick story. I think it's important to know that police officers are trained in what's called the Continuum of Force. And that begins with verbal commands before anybody even goes hands-on. There are a number of steps that officers will go through before they have to use some of these lethal forces. And fortunately, over the years, some of these things have been developed in less lethal, and we've had much better outcomes. I can tell you when I first started on the police department, you were handed a gun, a club about 3.5 feet long, and handcuffs. That was it. Fortunately, we've come a long way since then. This is also an issue of training, and that officers should not have to get to that final use of force without going through these steps when it's appropriate. Now, let me talk for a minute about the difference between tear gas and some other type of spray. This came up in police reform, and one of my colleagues actually filed a bill that would disallow police officers to carry any type of spray at all. I went to leadership and explained to them the difference on what's popularly called pepper spray. It's non-corrosive, it's non-injurious, and it's a step that police officers don't want to have to take, but sometimes they have to. This amendment would have banned that, but it would allow civilians, people that could put this on their keychains. That didn't make any sense. Military grade tear gas, non-starter. But let me say this. There are armored vehicles that sometimes we have to use. One of my last days on the police department, I oversaw a major operation where a resident of Salem was throwing quarter sticks of dynamite out his window. We had to call for an armored car to come in to evacuate one of the families and to bring the gas company in to shut down the gas to the house. We could not have done that without that armored vehicle. That should never be taken out of the garage unless it's the most serious. And I'll stop there with the 30 seconds.
Okay, gentlemen, that concludes our 10 questions. This has been incredibly educational for me, for the public. I believe the Rockport Democratic Town Committee has found it useful, and I hope that all of your supporters who will see this recording later on will be able to enjoy and help make their final decisions by Tuesday based on this. You'll be given a closing statement. I remind you to stick to only topics about yourself. Thank you very much for participating in this. Thank you to the Rockport Democratic Town Committee who helped organize it. Thank you to all the people who submitted questions. And thank you to 1623 Studios that will be presenting this on their YouTube channel once they've finished editing the raw tape that we'll be giving them immediately following this forum. So we begin, Jim, you get the first closing statement since Paul got the first opening statement.
Thank you, Nathaniel. And thank you again for the accommodation for this forum. This afternoon, voters, we've heard questions asked about bail. We've heard questions asked about the process in court, about judges making decisions, about district attorneys making decisions. I am intimately aware of all of those things because I've been involved in the courts for a quarter century. I've been there arguing bail in the courts all over the Commonwealth, not just in Essex County. I've seen what works and what doesn't work. I'm the only one with practical experience practicing law for almost a quarter century. I've been able to see from other counties the things that I would bring and implement to this county. For example, one of the things I lay out in my platform, the issue with IT, with the upgrade of the computer systems. That's not just an issue. It's not a small thing in the sense that we're going to be able to upgrade and keep the public information and private information private and protect those things from being hacked. It's an efficiency issue. We're giving our ADAs the ability to spend time on the things that they have to spend time on, which is the merits of the case rather than being bogged down with dealing with IT issues. So these things cut beyond just the simple upgrade in materials. We've talked today about the 58As that are being filed and the social justice issues. These are serious issues within this office that have been neglected and that have not been addressed. The numbers do not lie. 1,106 motions versus the next closest at 600. Lawrence filing 392 when all of Suffolk County files 392. This is a direct correlation between the people of color that are in jail at a disproportionate rate in Essex versus the rest of the state. I'm going to change that right away. I know this because I'm there arguing these motions. I'm there arguing bails. I'm there arguing a trial. I'm there at the pretrial level when I discuss issues with regard to resolution of cases on pleas. These are all parts of the case that have nothing to do with law enforcement. This is just me and the DAs talking about resolving the case on a plea. That's about 90% of the resolutions of the cases that actually come through the court. I want to finish by saying that this has been a very difficult and arduous process for me. I've never run for office before. We had to put together all the things that came together with running a campaign. And we had to go through and try and do the best we could in terms of raising money and things like that. It's been an extremely difficult August. As I've told you personally, this has been the worst August of my life, but we have persevered. And the validation and culmination of everything that myself and my team have put together and have tried to do in this campaign came in the form of an endorsement from the Lawrence Eagle Tribune just yesterday. I want the voters to know I don't know anybody at the Lawrence Eagle Tribune. I don't know or have any connection or ability to sway them one way or the other. They took a solid look at this, and the Lawrence Eagle Tribune and the Salem Evening News made an evaluation of me and said that I am the best candidate for this job. And it's based on my experience. And one of the things that they concluded was at the very end of the article, which really warmed my heart and made this all worthwhile to me. They said, Mr. O'Shea is in the best position to mentor these young lawyers. And I am. And you know why I am? Because my mentor, Kaz Lapata, spent 26 years doing it for me. I learned from the very best that there is and that there was. And I can't wait to pass on that knowledge and that experience to these young ADAs like I have in the session, like I've tried to do in the session every day of my professional career. I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak to you at this forum. And I respectfully and humbly ask for your vote this Tuesday on September the 6th. I'm ready to do this job. I've been training to do this job, and I can't wait to get started. Thank you so much, everyone.
Paul.
Thank you, Nathaniel. And thank you to you and the Rockport Dems and all of the folks for the last 8 months that have really helped us to get where we are today. We're almost at the finish line. I've led a very public life. I've had 40 years of public service in various places, in the police department, as a detective, as a police chief, as an elected official, as an attorney for 22 years, as an adjunct faculty member at the university and community college level. I have a very simple ask of the voters of Essex County. Take a look at the depth and the breadth of my experience. My view of the DA's office is somebody that he or she is somebody that's out in the community. The best way to predict the future is to take a look at the past. What has that person done? I've been a community person my whole life, from coaching youth sports to being on the boards of the YMCA, the Greater Salem Boys and Girls Club, the Salem Award Foundation, Voices for Injustice, Salem's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, just to name a few. This is something that has led me to this point. Getting a law degree helped me to do my job better. It opened my eyes. One of my early law school professors said it will teach you to think like a lawyer, to look at all sides. I've used that law degree every day of my professional life. When I went on to the State House from my police career, I had a seat at the table on so many of the issues of the day, transformative issues. My 8 years there has been, I believe, some of the most consequential in terms of police reform, criminal justice reform in the history of the Commonwealth. And I've been there at the beginning. By statute, the legislature makes the law and sets the punishment. That's what I've done working with so many. I've been a collaborator, I've been a leader, and I asked the voters of Essex County to look at every stop along the way of my career. You'll find I've been an innovator, from overseeing the conversion of the entire computer system at the police department, to bringing on the community impact unit, to integrating mental health clinicians. At the education side, I've taught over 1,000 prospective criminal justice students in my career, practitioners who are now halfway through their career. And in all of this, I've been a voice for the marginalized. I've never been afraid to stand up. If you take a look at somebody that you surround yourselves with, that says a lot about the person that you are. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the last 2 district attorneys who represent 44 years of very good service. I also have the endorsement of Maura Healey, our next governor. That means something deeply. And then if you take a look at the cross-section of endorsements that I have, from the unions, from the mass retirees to SEIU, to Teamsters, to the Massachusetts State Police, and secondly, to the commissioned officers of the state police. I have the unanimous endorsement of every Essex County police chief, unanimous. I also have the endorsement of the major city chiefs. And I have endorsement from so many individuals, people like Paul Lanzikos, who have worked with the elderly community, people like Charlie Carr up in Methuen, who's worked with the disability community. Take a look at all I've done. The breadth of my experience cuts across so many different spectrum, across the board. I don't believe that the DA should be in the courtroom trying cases. That's left for the assistant DAs. The district attorney himself or herself is to be in charge, have a vision, do it with leadership, do it with integrity. I also would add something that I think we need to talk more about. The DA is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. Take a look at any film clip when there's been a terrible crime, a homicide, some type of a home invasion, drug traffickers. You will see the DA himself or herself on the scene, because by statute, the DA oversees by law the investigation of every unattended death. I've done that. I've investigated so many homicides, unattended deaths, working closely, shoulder to shoulder with the DA's office, being a member of the Domestic Violence Lethality Assessment Team. I know how to do this job. I've done this job, and I've done it with integrity and vision, and that's what I'll bring to the DA's office. I appreciate so much support that I've gotten, most of all from my family. My wife of over 40 years now has come with me on every single event that we've gone to. From here, we've crisscrossed this county every single day. We have more events tonight, and she's such a good sport about it. My family, my friends, people who I didn't even know that have come to the campaign because they believe that I am best suited for this job. I appreciate it. And on September 6th, you have a choice. You have a choice to take a look at my experience, and I hope that your views align with mine. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you both for this fabulous forum. It was educational, informative, respectful, all the things that a good campaign should be, and I am deeply grateful, as I'm sure the entire of Essex County is. Have a wonderful day. Good luck with the rest of your campaigns. You can rest on Wednesday.
Thank you.